To talk about a few of the not so good things about China, the number one thing which has actually been quite frustrating to me, like it's one of the few things which actually makes me feel kind of mad, is just certain technical difficulties. And I have mentioned this before on China videos. Just little things. My laptop often will not charge. It's doing it right now. I've taken the battery out because somehow that tends to fix the problem. Like if I plug it into the wall with the battery still in, the laptop will not charge. It might work for a few minutes and then it just dies again. One possible solution that kind of works and it's working at the moment is take the battery out and then plug it in and then the laptop will work. It's just that if you very slightly bump the charging cable at some point, then it'll go just zip, it'll just shut off. So I'm kind of like, it's kind of nail biting the whole time. You don't want to be doing anything too important when you're doing this. I don't like doing it. But yeah, so once again, it is not charging properly. It usually does, like 60% of the time it does. Sometimes it just doesn't. It will not, doesn't matter what plug I plug it into. And again, I don't think there's any problem with the laptop or the battery. It works fine. Other things here are kind of slow. Again, just to do with the way that the Chinese do with their internet. But your mobile data, your Wi-Fi will tend to be fairly slow. It's often at the point where, say you have a 10-minute break at work and you want to go check something or you just want to muck around on your phone and relax for a few minutes. Decent chance you simply won't be able to because you will spend the whole 10 minutes just trying to get the internet to work, trying to get it to load, and it just won't. And then that's it. 10 minutes is up, back to work. You've just wasted 10 minutes of your life because the internet is not working. In terms of download speeds, the fastest I've really seen is maybe 1 megabyte per second. Faster than that, it'd be quite rare. So again, the internet does not necessarily work all that well. Something else I've noticed, and it's really been quite annoying, is that everything I buy in China tends to break after about 3 months. And I can illustrate for you this, right? When I first got here, I bought a kettle for my apartment. I bought this kettle, and it worked for about 3 months, and then it broke, just wouldn't turn on, wouldn't work. So yeah, I bought myself a new kettle, and that one also broke after about 3 months. And then I bought a third kettle, which again broke after about 3 months, and we are now on kettle number 4. So I've been in China just over a year. I had this one, I think, about 3 months. So I think we're due any day now, but I'm on kettle number 4 after a year in China. Admittedly, these were fairly cheap kettles. I just went and bought them at a store around the corner for 40 or 50 yuan or something. They were fairly cheap. And someone did say to me, yeah, you buy the cheap stuff, it'll break pretty quick, but really, 3 months, what's the point of that, even if it is cheap? So this one I have bought now, I think was slightly more expensive, like 70 or 80 yuan or something. So I bought a slightly more expensive version. Hopefully it'll last a bit longer. There are other examples though. So this cable, again, I bought for my phone to charge it. And again, it stopped working after about 3 months. And there's another one I don't have here, but 2 of these I've bought. And after 3 months, they stopped working. The one that I bought from home, which is still, it's like holding by a thread, that one still works. I've had it for years and it still works. One other thing I had was this power pack. Now, I talked about this last time I made a video about how the laptop was having trouble charging, so I bought a power bank, which was 99% effective. And this thing still works as far as I can tell, but the cable to plug from here into the laptop it doesn't work anymore. It doesn't work, it's broken. And so this thing is pretty much useless until I can find another cable, and I don't really know where to buy it. You've got to specifically say what this model is and what the laptop is and what will plug into that. And it's kind of hard to communicate that, especially in Chinese. I don't know, I'm sure I can find it somehow, but it's just a little difficult, so I haven't quite got around to it. So yeah, this is why my laptop is not charging particularly well again, because this solution, which was effective, broke again after about 3 months. And the craziest thing about it is that my laptop's actually quite old. It's a Toshiba laptop, so I guess that means Japanese, I presume made in Japan. And I'm not actually sure how old it is. Like when I came to China, my parents were just like, yeah, alright, here's an old laptop you can take. But it's running Windows 7. So I think that means pre-2009. So this laptop is more than 10 years old, and it still works fine. But everything that you buy in China, 3 months, it breaks. I also had certain technical difficulties at work, like every classroom I've got, there were sort of different errors. Like in one, the speakers didn't work too well. In the other one, the USB wouldn't plug in. Last semester, we actually got new computers. They replaced all the computers, which was fairly good, except for some reason, my good USB, the 16 gigabyte silver one, won't plug into any of them. So I've had to go back to the backup 4 gigabyte blue USB. So it's okay, that one works, but it's smaller, and so I kind of had to, sort out which videos I was going to put on it, because otherwise it would get a bit full. And then again, just the other week, one of my classrooms, I plugged the USB in, and it just stopped working, and I sort of talked to the Chinese teachers, it's like, yeah, it's just not working. Like, it's a new computer, we've only plugged it in a few months, and the USB ports already aren't working. Again, I mean, to some level, of course, stuff not working is universal. It happened in the West as well, but I think it is particularly still kind of bad in China. The only silver lining is that, again, you're in Shenzhen, you're in the Silicon Valley of China, so if something breaks, you can probably replace it pretty quick, but why does it have to keep breaking in the first place? Again, with the kettles breaking, one of them broke in a rather spectacular fashion, like it actually shorted, like all the lights went off and I had to reset the circuit breakers, was the cable that plugs it into the wall melted, and right now, it's like 6 months later, it's still got all this melted metal just stuck into it. I haven't told the landlord or anything because I don't know if he's going to bother to fix it. And there's other electrical cable sockets I can use, but that socket's now just useless because the kettle literally melted into the wall. I'm not sure how, but yeah, that's just another error that I had. Second thing about China that was kind of annoying, and in Shenzhen, again, this isn't really relevant in Shenzhen here, but when I did travel around China last time, there were some problems with the various forms of accommodation. The first place that I stayed, first hostel, I had a room to myself. It was a reasonably nice hostel, but there was like water leaking in. I talked about that in a previous video. Different things, you go to a hotel and you give them some laundry to wash and they will not wash the socks and the jocks. I don't know, you can't even pay them to do it, they just won't. It's not a thing they do in China. Stayed at another hostel and it had this really bad smell, smelled kind of like urine. Had mosquitoes, there was no Wi-Fi, I roomed with a guy who snored like a jet engine. I played audio of that last time. So again, I did find there can be certain problems with the accommodation in China. So the lesson I've learned after a while is you kind of should just bite the bullet and pay for a decent place. Pay for at least a 3-star hotel. Anything less than that, and you're just going to run, a whole gauntlet of problems that in the West you'd think you'd kind of take for granted, but in China they're still sort of working them out. Third thing I had problems with, and again I mentioned this in a previous video, there are certain elements of cultural weirdness. So the one that I had was when I took the high-speed train from Chongqing to Lhasa, and they confiscated my deodorant. They confiscated the spray-on deodorant like this. You couldn't take it on a train to Lhasa, and so I didn't have any deodorant for a couple of weeks, and I kept trying to buy it. I couldn't find anywhere to buy it until I came back to Shenzhen, and there's one specific store near where I work that's sort of a high-end store, I guess, and they have deodorant. Chinese, just by and large, don't wear it. They don't sweat as much. Not saying that they smell, if anything, it's the opposite. They don't smell, so they don't wear deodorant. So if you're a big, hairy Westerner like me, then you need to find specifically where you can buy it. That's just one area of culture that's a bit different. I've had other examples, like how the apartments don't have baths. Like, I actually went on Taobao and ordered a bath for 400 yuan because I like baths. Like, not all the time, but every now and then. What's wrong with sitting in the bath, like on a Sunday night when you just want to relax before, the next week of work, and you just want to sit there and relax for a little bit and read a book or read something on the iPad. I like the occasional bath, but the Chinese never take baths. It's weird. They just have showers. One thing also, and again this can vary, but look, lots of people in the West can have slightly odd beliefs. There's the well-known ones about, the moon landing being a hoax or, anti-vaxxers or so on. And I've, picked up on a little bit of that in China after a while, like any other country. Like, one person I knew, she's sort of under the impression that electric cars kill people. Like, I'm not quite sure why. I was talking about how, I like that Shenzhen has, skyscrapers and high-speed trains, and there's electric cars everywhere. Half the taxis here now are electric. And she was a bit suspicious about it. It's like, no. Some of those taxi drivers, once they introduced the electric cars, they started dying mysteriously. Like, I think she's under the impression that electric cars is like asbestos or something, like it gives you cancer, or I guess I've never heard that before. It's just something that she specifically believed. And she's like, no, I take the metro. I don't take an electric taxi. I take a petrol-driven car or something. But you're going to have some cultural differences. Probably the worst example of this, though, like just the weirdest example, which kind of blew my mind a bit. And this is kind of an odd story. It's kind of a bit embarrassing. So again, your dating life in China can be fairly active. Tinder can work quite well here. And there was one girl that I did have a bit of a relationship with last year. For a few months, and she came and stayed over a few times, and the first time was all right, and she stayed over, and then the second time she said, I'd rather not sleep in the bed. I'm like, what? She's like, I'd rather not sleep in the bed, it's too soft. I'm like, okay, where would you rather sleep? And she said, how about I sleep on the couch? I'm like, okay, so she stayed over, I slept in the bed, she slept in the couch, and then the third time she came over, she said, no, actually, I don't really like the couch either, I'd like to sleep on the floor. And I just thought this was so weird. And like, why do you want to sleep on the floor? She's like, it's too soft. I'm used to sleeping on a hard surface. And I actually went over to her apartment where she lived once, and I saw that her bed was just a hard wooden slab with some sheets and blankets and pillows on it. And again, it's not because she was dirt poor or anything. Again, most people in Shenzhen are not dirt poor. They live in quite normal apartments, and but it's just the tradition in China. A lot of people, they don't sleep on soft mattresses. They just sleep on a hard surface, and that's what she's used to, and that's what she does. And so, yeah, she came back again and she said, I'd like to sleep on the floor. I'm like, oh, okay, how do we do that? And she's like, oh, well, could we just go out and buy a mat? I'm like, okay. And so we went downstairs and I found, just in a nearby store, because there's shops everywhere, and we bought like this roll-out mat. I've still got it here. She made me buy this, just a roll-up mat like that. And so, I put that down on the floor, and, she got a blanket and a pillow. And I'm like, it's like, 8 o'clock, I've got to get up for work in the morning. I'm like, all right, we're good now. You can sleep there. She's like, yep, that's fine. I'll sleep here. And, I'm in the bed and she's on the floor and I'm about to turn the light off. And then I just hear this ear-splitting screech from the floor, from the foot of my bed, and it just said, roach! And yeah, it turned out there was a cockroach in the apartment, which occasionally they do turn up. I haven't really mentioned it. Like, in Australia you'll have spiders. In China I've had the odd cockroach. I wouldn't say it's a big deal. Like, just a few times in the past year I've seen a cockroach or two and I've sprayed it. Not that big a deal. But yeah, there was a cockroach on the floor, and so I got up and killed the cockroach, got rid of it. And so she realized at this point, oh, okay, so her options are she can sleep in a nice comfy double bed with her nice handsome Western boyfriend, or she can sleep on the hard cold floor on a mat that's about 2 millimeters thick with one blanket and one pillow with cockroaches around her. She picked the cockroaches. So number 4 thing that I'd mention, again, look, one of the positive things I mentioned is how certain things are more permissible here, like the availability of alcohol, which is just everywhere, but on the other hand, certain things which are not. So, lots of places there is really quite tight security, I mean, the little urban village where I live, there's, every little sort of entrance, there's a police officer, I think it's police officers sort of sitting there 24/7 just guarding the place, and there's cameras everywhere, and you see them flashing sometimes. They take a picture of you when you come in and out. And there's a lot of sort of gated communities, and of course, every apartment there's bars on the window so people don't break in. Again, I haven't really seen any evidence of crime or of violence, but they're sort of, let's just call it overly, paranoid about security. Again, whether it's to do with sort of crime or terrorism, but there's a lot of security. So you go to the metro station, for instance, and you got to go through the metal detector and then put your bag through the x-ray machine before you scan in and hop on the metro. Again, that's not something I've done in Australia or any other Western country I've been to. You'd only really do that at somewhere like the airport or if you're going to a courthouse or something. But here, it's just everywhere. You go on the metro, you got to spend... Usually it's not a lot. In the mornings, I guess, because I go to work fairly early in the morning before 8 a.m., so it doesn't really delay me more than 30 seconds. Occasionally, in the evenings, if you're going home and there's a big line of people, you might spend 5 or 10 minutes waiting to get through, to scan your stuff and get on. But yeah, it is just this little extra delay, this little speed bump in your day, going through this extra security, which personally I think is quite unnecessary. I don't think there's going to be any trouble. I think if anything, it's sort of a big jobs program. It's like, yeah, we need to keep people employed in China, so let's just hire 10,000 people to be the train station security in Shenzhen. Let's just do that, and they do that. So yeah, certain things, it's a bit over the top in terms of security. I have noticed other examples of this. I remember, again, working at the kindergarten. I went home one day at like 5 p.m. and I walk out the front of the kindergarten, and there's a van right in front of the kindergarten that has security written on it. And I'm pretty sure it's one of those bank vans, the ones which carry the money, because there's actually a bank like 2 doors down from the kindergarten, and there's a Chinese security guard or police officer or whatever standing there, and he's all black uniform, it looks kind of serious, and he's got like a shotgun, like a great big dirty shotgun that big, and he's just standing there right in front of the kindergarten. And I remember seeing that and just thinking, oh, all right. It's just not a sight I've ever remembered seeing in Australia. That juxtaposition of the big serious security shotgun wielding security guard with these 4-year-old kindergarten students walking past him. It's just anyway. But yeah, some things in terms of security, they're a little bit over the top here. And the final area I'd mention, look again, there is a language barrier in China which can be very real at times. Most day-to-day things, it's fairly simple, but it really comes to these specific difficult things. That's when you need help. So again, if there's a certain item I wanted to buy, when I wanted to buy deodorant traveling around China, and I got out the translation device and the translation app and tried to put deodorant in, and they didn't understand what it was, and they ended up giving me something which turned out to be insect repellent because they just don't really have deodorant in China. Or other examples, I'm looking for a new cable to plug in the power bank to the laptop. Just the other day, actually, I got a new cover for the phone, which wasn't too hard because I could just type in Samsung phone cover on the phone and show it to them, or I could just, it was kind of peeling, and I could just sort of, grab the edges of it and show it to them and be like, yeah, can you give me a new one of this little crumbling thing? So there's sort of a bit of sign language and translation apps, and hopefully you have a Chinese friend or someone at the agency who can help you. Like if you want to go to the bank and send money home, that's a whole thing, which might take 45 minutes, and you're definitely going to need a Chinese person there to communicate the whole thing. But after a while, you do get used to it. So the language barrier here is real, usually can be overcome. There's just certain specific elements which can be kind of difficult. Like I know that, I get texts all the time written in Chinese. I don't know what the hell they're about. I can put them in the translation app and it's to do with my mobile phone bill or something. Sometimes it's a little tricky, but for the most part, you can get over that. So yeah, that's 5 good things and 5 bad things about China, just the experience I've had. On the whole, been a very positive experience. I quite recommend it. If it depends what you're looking for. But I'm a person who finished university like a year and a half ago, and I thought, yeah, coming to China for, I think it's going to be 2 years in total, save up some money, have a good experience, travel a bit, and then I think I might do a bit more traveling when I'm finished, and then we'll go home, to actually have a shot at establishing some, soul-sucking corporate career, as we all need to do. But yeah, I think it's been a good experience. Those are just some of the good things, some of the bad things that I've had, some of the oddities, and I've got a lot more weird stories like this. I'll probably get around to telling at some point. So yeah.